The assumption is usually that if someone has no friends, something is fundamentally broken. We label them as lonely, socially awkward, or perhaps even cold. But psychology tells a much more nuanced story. Having a small social circle, or no circle at all, isn't always a deficit. Often it is a sophisticated survival strategy or a deliberate choice of character. To understand the lone wolf, we have to look at the three primary psychological archetypes of solitude. First, the deliberate. These are the highly selective socializers. They possess what psychologists call a low need for affiliation. This doesn't mean they hate people, it means they have an incredibly high bar for intimacy. They find the performance of small talk exhausting and would rather spend a Saturday night in silence than occupy their time with filler friends who don't offer genuine intellectual or emotional depth. For them, solitude isn't a lack of options, it's a recharge. It is the peace found in not having to mask their true selves for the sake of a crowd. Second, the disconnected. This is where the internal barriers live. For some, a lack of friends is a protective shield. Individuals with avoidant attachment styles or past social trauma often view independence as safety. The logic is simple. If I don't let you in, you can't let me down. In these cases, being alone isn't a lack of desire for connection, it's an abundance of caution. Their solitude is a fortress built to keep the peace, even if it means keeping the world at bay. And third, the developing. We are currently living through what experts call a friendship recession. Between the rise of remote work, digital burnout, and the unique challenges of neurodivergence like ADHD or autism, the unwritten rules of maintaining friendships have become more taxing than ever. For many, being friendless isn't a personality flaw, it's a byproduct of a modern world that has made spontaneous, organic connection harder to find. When we look closer at the personality profile of these individuals, we see traits that often go unnoticed. One is hyperobservation. Because they aren't constantly managing the social dynamics of a large group, they are highly attuned to their environment. They see the micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in tone, and the inconsistencies in others that most people miss. They are the observers of the human condition, reading the room while everyone else is just talking over it. There is also an intense level of self-reliance. When you don't have a constant support network to lean on, you develop a solver mindset. You learn to navigate emotional lows and practical hurdles entirely on your own. This creates a psychological resilience that is rare, but it can also lead to a fortress mentality, where asking for help feels like a personal failure. Intellectually, those with small circles often exhibit niche intensity. Without the time drain of constant social maintenance, their mental energy is poured into specific interests, hobbies, or mastery. They don't just like things, they dive into them until they understand the very core of how they work. Ultimately, we must recognize the massive psychological divide between solitude and loneliness. Solitude is a superpower that fuels creativity and self-reflection. Loneliness is a hunger. One is a deliberate choice. The other is a painful void. The personality of someone with no friends is often defined by a refusal to perform. They would rather exist in a vacuum of truth than a crowd of pretense. So before we judge the person standing alone, we should ask, are they lonely, or are they finally at peace?